Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast for July 20th, 2014. This is episode 74, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Blake Pertuzit.
And I'm Andrew Johnson.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 74. If you're not purging, we advise you to get off the streets as quickly as possible.
JD, this is my podcast granted to me by my government, and I'm about to unleash the beast.
Your friend's building is close. Go through the business district. Stay away from the gangs downtown. Stay back, stay back. What are they doing? Where are they taking us? Right, it's not our business.
Those are the guys that were after us.
Okay, it's not our problem. We're gonna have people in front of us and we're gonna have people behind us. As long as we move, we'll be fine. We're gonna cross banks.
No, that's a long way. It's gonna be much quicker if we go down here.
I'm stuck! Get off of me! I'm stuck!
It's a trap! We don't have time! Move away! I gotta shoot it! Move away!
What?
You're gonna what? I'm gonna shoot it! Move!
What? Okay.
Shoot it! Shoot the cable!
Shane, hurry up!
Get up! Get up!
All right, The Purge Anarchy is directed by James DeMonaco and stars Frank Grillo, Carmen Ejogo, Zach Gilford, Kylie Sanchez, Zoe Soul, and a few other people as well. I'll toss it to you first, Andrew. What did you guys think about The Purge Anarchy?
I actually really liked this film. Granted, I am a bigger fan of the first Purge movie than most critics out there, but I thought that this sequel was just as good, if not better, than the first film. I think that this is a horror/thriller franchise that really speaks to the times we live in. It's definitely not subtle with most of its themes.
Yeah,
sure.
But I like it because it's a series in which it's basically a slasher series. And I think critic, what's his name? Bilge Ceylon said it best when he said that it's a slasher film in which the villain is not a murderer. The villain is society. The killer is the system, basically. And I find that to be a really fascinating concept. And I thought that the the characters aren't the most three-dimensional characters out there, but they serve their function. You've got Frank Grillo as this protector who's out there on the streets, who decides to protect some people who are in trouble, and then you've got a bunch of other supporting characters who are running for their lives, trying not to die. And but overall, I really like this film. It's definitely been one of the highlights of the summer for me.
Well, I can see some of the ways that you're feeling about this right now, but I really did not like it at all. Now, I didn't see the first Purge, and I guess maybe that's part of my issue with it. I guess maybe I don't know, but it seemed like you used the term slasher film. Nobody got slashed. It was just a bunch of guns ablazing for no reason. It was idiocy. I don't get it, I guess. And I felt like there was something throughout the entire film that just didn't feel right to me. And when the credits hit, I found out what the problem was, because the first text on the screen says produced by Michael Bay. And that's part of what. Here we go. And you know what? I didn't know that was going to happen, JD. I didn't know that he was involved with this film. Then now I found out.
But this doesn't look or feel anything like a Michael Bay film.
It felt like there was stuff blowing up and people shooting for. Okay, I'm sorry, and I try to have fun with these things. You know when we talked about Transformers, and I went into it, and I tried to actually just enjoy it and have fun with it. I can't pull myself into this world where every regular old civilian knows how to operate a fully automatic rifle and is just running around acting like that. I don't get it. It doesn't work for me. I was pulled out of this so many times here. It was as predictable as any, if you want to call it. I didn't feel any horror throughout the entire thing either. I didn't see that. I did not like much or any of it. There was, again, of course, we're not expecting three-dimensional characters here, but it was as bland of acting as I've ever seen. And I wasn't expecting, Oscar-winning performances either here, but literally, if I wasn't coming here to record this show and talk about the movie, there were literally 3 times when I almost just closed my eyes and said, I'll just take a nap here instead. I literally literally had that thought.
Interesting.
So yeah,
Well,
not a fan.
I guess I'm kind of more in the middle of you guys. I didn't like this movie a ton, but I certainly didn't hate it either. I'm more like you, Andrew. I feel like I'm one of few people that liked the first one. I might not have loved it, but I definitely liked what it was doing. I think with the first Purge film, my biggest disappointment was we didn't really get a grand scale of this interesting premise. And that was something I wanted to see more of going into this film, which I feel like we did get a little bit of that here. But I can't completely disagree with you, though, Blake, that I didn't really care for much of the acting either. There was I felt like a million plot twists in here for no reason that just felt really contrived. I think just to kind of put these characters into scarier or more thrilling situations that I didn't necessarily need forced onto me. But that being said, I also think there's some really interesting themes that are being played here. Something you alluded to, Andrew, was that this film is very transparent in its themes and what it's talking about. I also like that idea of the society is what's the quote-unquote bad guy or villain of this film. And that whole idea of if we were put into this world, how would people react and how would people change their behavior towards other people, knowing that this thing exists. And that to me is pretty interesting. And there's other themes of class warfare and stuff that we can get into. But I did think the pacing of this film was pretty good. I was pretty much engaged with the story for the most part. I never thought it was dull, even though the story does contrive, I think, some of that. But I think from a direction standpoint, there's some really good stuff going on here. My biggest thing is some of the narrative twist I just didn't really care for. And the acting, as you were talking about, I didn't really like a whole lot either, especially, God bless her soul, Zoe Soul, no pun intended there, I guess, with what I was saying. But she was so annoying in this movie.
Yeah.
Her character to me was just absurd, and her acting was just so over the top to me. And I understand to a degree, her character, I think, was supposed to be a little annoying, especially to Frank Grillo's character. But to me, it was too excessive and too forced for me, and it was too much.
Well, yeah, she's trying to be this badass and talking to him the whole time, and she's trying to walk ahead of the group and complain to him and argue with him about stuff. And then as soon as a gunshot pops off, she's back there behind everybody crying with her hands over her face. You can't. No.
Yeah, it did become detracting to me.
Yeah.
It really took me out of the film. Andrew, any thoughts on that?
I didn't have much of a problem with her character. I thought she's supposed to be the voice of conscience to Frank Grillo's character, and I thought that was fine. I want to piggyback off what you said about the premise and how you said you were a little bit let down with the first film and how it didn't develop this premise in which there's one night a year in which all crime is legal. Personally, I didn't have a problem with that because, honestly, I feel like the premise really isn't. Yeah, it's a good premise, but it's not that unique. Honestly, when we go to the movies most of the time and we see horror films and we see action films, most of the time there's a ton of violence in those movies that has absolutely no consequences.
Sure.
So the only difference is that this is a film in which it's making that part of the quote-unquote real world. It's no longer a fantasy. This is a premise in which supposedly in the real world there will be all this violence with no consequences. So it's really just an excuse to explore violence and humanity's capacity for violence at both the institutional level and the individual level as well. And that's what I find really interesting because so many movies are violent just for the sake of it or just to be entertaining. Here's a series that actually wants to explore that and take a look at violence, not only in society, but also violence in film itself. And I think the first film was very, very meta in certain ways and very much acknowledging, yes, Hollywood to a certain extent is part of the problem. You're here watching all of this violence, all of this carnage, hoping to be entertained. The second film isn't quite heavy-handed with that theme, though there is, of course, a scene in which you have a bunch of people looking through a screen watching other people get hunted for fun. So if you draw, I think you could definitely draw some parallels there with the whole idea of violence as entertainment in general. But there are just moments like that just really got me thinking.
For the entire version of our podcast, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or on Stitcher, or check us out online at InSessionFilm.com.